Hello friends and welcome to New York City. I am here for a few days. The number one reason I am here is because today is Thursday, April 13th. On Sunday, April 16th, after 35 years on Broadway, Phantom of the Opera, the musical that shaped my childhood and turned me into the theater geek that I am today, is closing. And that really is a tragedy. What is not a tragedy is that I have tickets for tomorrow night. So I managed to take off a few days and we are going to have some theater adventures and some food adventures and some fabric adventures, because when in Rome, one does like the Romans. When in New York, one does like Bernadette Banner. So we are going to visit the Garment District, we are going to visit 39th Street, and we're going to check out some epic fabric stores. And to the people in my life that were told that I was on a fabric buying ban and not allowed to buy any fabric until I used up some of the stuff that was in my stash, to that I say, well, first of all, I decluttered a bit of fabric before I came, so I do actually have some room to store new fabric, but also fabric shopping in New York is like eating homemade cookies at Christmas time. The calories don't count. So get ready for some fantastic Merry Manhattan adventures. The first stop in our Garment District adventures was East Coast Trimming, which specializes in the most gorgeous vintage lace and ribbons, and let me tell you, I wanted to take the entire store home with me. Then we briefly stopped into B&J Fabrics, which I didn't get any footage of because while the fabric selection was admittedly epic, the building gave off Devil Wears Prada, haute couture, you are a peasant and have wandered into where you do not belong kind of vibes. Now, I could be totally wrong, and I'm sure the staff are lovely, but I personally prefer more homey fabric stores where the bolts are packed wall to wall to wall, and it feels more like a cave of wonders. So we didn't end up staying very long. Instead, we headed off to the legendary Beckenstein. If you watch Bernadette Banner, you'll have heard her talk about Beckenstein. They specialize in luxury fabrics, particularly men's suiting fabrics. And I had told myself, if and when I ever got back to New York, I was allowed to buy one singular yard to make a waistcoat. For lunch, we stopped at Ichiran Ramen for quite possibly the best bowl of ramen I have eaten yet. We are back from the first bit of fabric shopping. You know, some girls come back from New York with bags from Prada and Chanel. Other girls come back with fabrics from Beckenstein's. Oh, I can't wait to show you. Then it was time to get gussied up and make our way to the Majestic Theater for Phantom of the Opera. This was a special charity performance, so we got a beautiful one-off playbill. And guest appearances at the end from Ali Ewoldt, Sierra Boggess, and the legendary Sarah Brightman herself. I have no words. I also have no voice. There was a lot of cheering involved, but that was amazing. That was an incredible evening. My playbill is full. My heart is full. I am so glad I did this trip. I am so glad that we came. I am so glad that we got to see the show before it was done. The production was amazing. Everything I hoped it would be. Wow, that was amazing. It's now just about midnight and I am ready for bed. So I will see you all in the morning. Saturday was a day to explore the city, starting with brunch at Sweet Chick, and then a trip up 86 floors to the top of the Empire State Building. Then we headed to the Upper West Side because I am a geek and had to find Neil Caffrey's place from White Collar. And then we spent the rest of the day gallivanting around Central Park, which, considering that the last time I was here was on a bitter cold February day, springtime is absolutely magical. Then it was a quick dinner at Times Square Diner for BLTs the size of my hand and a classic egg cream before grabbing a cream puff at Bibble and Sip to take back to the hotel for a late-night pajama snack. We spent most of Sunday in Lower Manhattan, starting the adventures off with lunch at Shiki Omakase, which is officially the best sushi I have ever eaten in my entire life. We wanted to see the Statue of Liberty, but didn't really want to spend money on an official tour, so we took the budget option of riding the Staten Island Ferry, which gives you fantastic views and is 100% free. And we located yet another geekery spot, Richard Castle's loft from, well, Castle. We grabbed some tea at Harney & Sons and some cookies at Levain Bakery before stopping for the most perfectly New York pizza at Joe's in Greenwich Village and some cheesecake at Eileen's Special Cheesecake. Monday was our last day-ish, and since we didn't have to leave for the airport until 2:30, we squeezed in the second half of fabric shopping. We began with M&J Trimming, which is another store where I could happily just take the whole thing with me. I showed remarkable restraint, but my ever-growing list of projects just got a little longer. Next we went to Hamed Fabrics, which is full to the brim of the most beautiful shiny pretties. Lastly, we went over to Mood Fabrics, which was not as busy as I had heard stories of, but was just slightly overwhelming in the sheer amount of fabrics available. My understanding of the variety of fabric types grew just by going through those aisles. And since we somehow still managed to have a bit of time left before we had to leave, we stopped down at Eataly for a second time to grab their amazing marinara pizza before we had to say farewell to New York. At least, for now. So now we're obviously back home. It's only fitting to show off what I got in New York. First off is the hat you saw throughout the video. On the first day, we stopped at JJ's Hat Center on 5th Avenue. I hadn't planned on buying a hat of my own. I was mostly there to show my brother all the cool hats. But once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. I did try to argue that technically I didn't have anything that went with it, to which my brother said, "So make something that goes with it." And I went, "Oh yeah, I can do that." Sold. So yes, if you're in New York and in the market for an excellent quality hat, JJ's Hat Center is amazing. The service is top tier and the whole shop feels like you've traveled back in time or into a steampunk dimension. It's awesome. Into the garment district adventures. I didn't buy as much fabric as I thought I might. I had been carefully packing suitcases and had a plan to ship back yards of fabric if I couldn't fit everything in, but I didn't need to. Partially because I am a semi-responsible grown-up and partly because of project paralysis. I have a couple big projects coming up down the pipeline and I was totally planning to buy a whole ton of fabric if the right material came up, but once it was in my hand, I kind of froze and went, I should do more research first. But I still did find some beautiful treasures. Firstly, from East Coast Trimming, I got 5 yards each of these lovely laces. I'm getting ready to make the top half of an Edwardian lingerie dress, and these are going to be perfect. I also got 1 yard of this lovely trim that I'm going to use to trim the top of my Victorian corset. And I thought this looked familiar, got it back to the hotel, pulled up a YouTube video, and realized that this is the exact same lace that Bernadette Banner used to trim her Victorian corset. So, what are the odds? And then in an impulse purchase, I also got 2 yards of this gorgeous trim. I'm thinking I'll probably make a medieval fantasy tunic, and this will trim the cuffs and collar, but I'm not 100% sure yet. From Beckenstein, I bought 1 yard of this glorious wool suiting. It was the most amount of money I have ever spent on a single yard of fabric, and I regret nothing. This is going to make the most splendid waistcoat, and incidentally, the blue in this pattern matches the blue of my new hat perfectly. From M&J Trimming, I got 1 yard of this lovely teal ribbon, and I'm going to take a page from Bernadette and replace the ivory ribbon in this corset lace with this teal ribbon as an accent. And another 5 yards of lace for my Edwardian summer project. From M&J Fabrics, I picked up this satin lining fabric for a coat I'm going to make later this year. I had been looking at contrasting fabric colors, and then I found this navy which exactly matches the outer fabric, so I bought 3 yards of this. For the price I paid, it is definitely polyester, but it's going to be a history-bounding coat, so I don't care. And then lastly, I randomly stopped into a shop that hadn't even been on my radar, Trim Art, which is right across from Mood and specializes in ribbons and trims. I picked up 6 yards of teal ribbon to lace up my corset, and in a total impulse, I have no clue what I'm doing this, but I need it in my life purchase, I got 1 yard of this. It's so shiny. It may become the collar trim on some kind of corset or boned bodice fantasy gown in the future, but I just needed to get it. My magpie brain is very happy with this. So that was my whirlwind trip of New York City. All the places I visited will be in the description below if you're planning a trip and want some recommendations. I am so glad I was finally able to get back. It's been 7 years since I was there last, and I am very much hoping it will be far less than 7 years before I'm back again. I am definitely already making plans for what I'm going to do on the next trip.